Hello, alchemists, and welcome back to LabTech, where we tell you how the sausage is made here at Alkimi. Today, we're going to talk about AI. So we've got a lot to dive into on this front. It's going to be a little bit more technical than it maybe normally is, but we really want to tell people the kind of secret sauce behind how Alkimi operates. We obviously have a distributed ledger, we have a blockchain, and those are the kind of infrastructure pieces. But as far as our client facing and client servicing goes, we actually use a lot of AI tools. And those have been built over the last kind of year or so. And I think what people often think is like, right, I use ChatGPT, it can do anything because it's a large language model. But really what we're talking about is using small language models that are built on very specific tasks that Alkimi needs them to do. So at Alkimi, we've obviously tried to build out media buying 3.0. And within that, there are kind of three major pillars, which is AdTech, also the kind of Web3 aspects where we use a lot of that for the infrastructure. And the sort of third part is using AI to create efficiencies within our network. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on those pillars that we have?
Yeah, sure. So basically, the three pillars, as you rightly said, are the Web3, which forms the infrastructure, AdTech, which is the business layer, and then we have AI, which enables both these pillars to operate more efficiently. So Web3 infrastructure layer includes things like the ads token, which powers the ad exchange, and then we have the liquidity pool, which provides the liquidity for the token and thereby supports the network. And thirdly, we have the validator pool, which provides us the processing bandwidth to be able to validate and notarize ad auctions on the chain. We also have users who are connecting their wallets into publishers' websites, which then act as the replacement for third-party cookies. So all of this form the underlying layer, which is the infrastructure and the supporting layer on which the business logic is built. The second layer is the AdTech layer. This AdTech layer conforms to all of the standards such as OpenRTB, pre-bid, and that is the layer that interacts with both the supply side and the demand side and gives both the supply and the demand side the feeling of conformance of the same standards, the same practices that they've been used to without actually revealing anything that's under the hood. And that puts them at ease where they see the same type of interfaces, the same practices that they would have seen with the legacy ad exchange. And that is all handled by the AdTech layer. Now, there's the third component, which is the AI layer, which actually makes sure that both these layers, the AdTech and the Web3 layer, operate in the most efficient manner as possible. For example, the AdTech layer has a lot of inefficiencies going beyond the problems that we usually speak about, the problems of transparency, inefficient supply chain, and a high carbon footprint. There are other peripheral problems as well, such as the operational overhead. The amount of time it takes for a campaign to be created, the amount of humans that are involved in each of these steps that go all the way from creating a campaign to delivering it to actually reporting on it and then closing the campaign is very, very cumbersome. And such problems which involve a lot of operational overhead can be dealt with the AI layer.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's really been the year of AI, 2024, and maybe a bit before, but I think really it's where people are actually finding that product market fit with how they use AI and the jobs that they want them to do. And this is really where you've seen like the growth of AI agents as opposed to kind of just general AI that can do anything from information on the internet. It's agents do specific tasks that are needed by the network or by the business that's using them.
That's very true. In fact, the way I look at it is in a modular approach, where we are training up different models to perform specific tasks. For example, there are various problems in the AdTech industry going beyond the normal transparency, inefficient supply chain, and carbon efficiency problems. There are also problems such as operational overheads. There is way too much stickiness in the whole system, where you can see, for example, what happens with popular DSPs. They have training programs which actually show people how to create campaigns on the DSPs, and that is not good for anybody because if it takes months for somebody who is in the sales business to actually learn how to create a campaign, then we are being very inefficient. So these are peripheral problems that we also have to deal with in order to make sure that we are not just efficient in terms of conducting auctions or providing the data, but also removing as many overheads as possible in making the system as efficient as possible across the board. And that is where AI really comes into picture.
Yeah, it makes me think of that phrase that you always tell me, but I'll get to that in a minute. When you look at an agency and how they operate, there is called programmatic advertising, but the programmatic part happens after a human has like input a load of information, which has been fine up until this point, but it doesn't mean that you get repeatable processes. So like even between particular clients or particular agencies, they end up losing a lot of information in the human side of it, rather than that data being stored and then finding those solutions over time through operations where you might do the same thing and change one thing, and then you realize that that works better. So that becomes the new way of doing it, and you repeat that process over time. A lot of these businesses have always on campaigns. That means that throughout the year, they're probably spending money somewhere on something. But previously, the kind of phrase was that you used to have to, so you know that 30% of your marketing works, but you don't know which 30%. So you have to switch bits on and off. Whereas now through a system like AI, you can do a lot more A/B testing in real time in order to find out what those answers to the questions are that you're looking to answer, or get to that metric that you want to get to, or reach that person you need to reach. All of those things can now be captured within an AI agent and a model that will then make the efficiencies of those agencies. I always think there's something like we spoke to somebody at an agency and they said that 1 week of every month is spent reconciling the campaigns that they had, which is kind of crazy when you think it's a programmatic system, it buys programmatically, but you've got a whole week of people's time and effort in reconciling spreadsheets, which again is a job that AI would definitely do better, but also the data that they're getting is corrupted to begin with. So they're having to kind of mesh together these two things, and it probably gets to the end of the month and they're just like, okay, cool, well, plus minus 10%, that's fine. Just like, let's do that. But when you're talking about an industry that is, was $660 billion, 10% is $66 billion. Like, it's not a small amount. Yeah. And then you think about the time of the people involved in that system, that again is a massive inefficiency, and it's something that can be completely replaced with AI, both from a what happens perspective, what information do we need to get from it, but also planning and buying in the first place. So it's that thing where it's not that AI is necessarily going to replace everyone's job. It's just going to do the grunt work of all the jobs that people don't want to do.
Exactly that. Because we have to deal with all of these operational overheads and inefficiencies. So what we are doing in Alkimi is to use the ad exchange and the DSA being the demand side agent that we've developed, in order to use the AI agents and models that we've developed. So we look at it in terms of small models which are trained to do specific tasks. Like, for example, there's a model that we're working on, which we're training on in order to ingest user inputs about what their products are, what their advertising budget is, and who are their target audiences, and to generate a complete conclusive media plan that could then be presented back to the brands or the media agencies. And this can be done very, very easily sitting in a pub where you ask somebody over a drink, oh, by the way, what is your product? Well, what is it that you guys are trying to do? And then you input that into the engine and into the agent, and then it would then spit out a media plan that you can immediately email over or just show over the counter as you're having a beer with to somebody else. And that could then give them the confidence that, yes, if these people can actually generate a media plan for me in a couple of minutes, I'm sure they would do a good job in delivering the campaign as well. So that's one of the models that we're working on. In fact, if I have to just elaborate on the different models and the agents that are built on top of them, the first model would be to generate a media plan based on very simple plain English prompts that are provided by these sales agents. The second one would be, for example, to ingest media plans from other media agencies, and to be able to interpret media plans, not only those that are generated by our models, but also those that are generated externally, and to be able to interpret them and be able to create draft campaigns that can then be reviewed by a sales agent, and then with the press of a button, that campaign can go live. So that is very, very important, where we no longer need those training of sales agents. There are multiple trainings that you can look at on, for example, Udemy or various other portals, where people are trained on how to create a campaign. What goes into creating a campaign? How do you upload creatives? How do you create line items? How do you then set different strategies for the flight path of the campaign and so on? But all of that is now going to be done by the model that we're training in order to ingest all of the media plans and then be able to throw out a draft campaign that can then be reviewed manually once, and then you hit go and the campaign is live.
Yeah, it makes me think of that phrase that I think Ben said before, which is like UI will be replaced by AI, where it's like you don't need to understand how to set up a campaign in a specific dashboard, going to the right area of the site and then putting the right information to get the output that you want, which is just a plan that you put together, which involves many line items, and you've got to make sure you make no mistakes along the way. You'll just speak to an AI agent, you'll tell them what you need, or even just input that already made plan or whatever it is, and it will set up that campaign and run it. And then it will also make the optimizations towards the metrics that are important to you. I think the other thing that is always quite interesting is the metrics and the way data is laid out between the different platforms that people might use. So even if you're using one DSP, the SSP on the other side might have laid out their information in a different way. So then you get like 5 different spreadsheets all telling you roughly the same information, but they're using slightly different words to describe what that column is about. So again, like having AI learn how to use that once, it'll get repeated over and over again, and you can put together any of those spreadsheets together or the report after the campaign.
That's true. In fact, this is where RAG comes in, where there will be retrieval that will augment the historical data that you use to train your AI models, and that is extremely important, especially when we are creating bespoke reports, for example. Or another model that we're training up now is a bid shaper, we call it, where when we get a bid request, we will need to be able to, or the model will need to be able to accurately tell you what is the right price at which to respond to that particular request in order to achieve the win rate that is the target of the campaign.
If we kind of go a bit deeper into that and actually talk about the kind of structure that goes into how the AI agents interact with the model and the database in order to create those kind of better outcomes.
Yeah, so I see this again in different layers. On the topmost layer is the orchestration layer. That could be through the ad exchange, that could be through the DSA, which would then expose the agents, and the agents would interact with sales agents, sales executives. They could interact with, they could provide interactions with operational executives or FinOps team members, who would then interact with the agent in order to perform certain tasks. And the agent would be designed so as to nothing. We want to be able to train small models for specific tasks, and we add on a chain of these models in order to provide an end-to-end experience. So the first model, as we spoke about, was the media plan generator. We have another model, for example, which ingests media plan, whether that's generated by us or externally, and to be able to create draft campaigns. So that would remove the stickiness around the training involved in a staff, in a sales agent trying to determine how to create a campaign. So that is completely removed. Using simple prompts, the sales agent would then be able to create a campaign using a media plan or simple prompts. And then we have another model, for example, which is probably one of the most complicated models that we are working on, which is to determine in real time how much to bid for any given bid request. And that would involve not just the model training using historical data, but it would also involve retrieval augmented systems, where we then typically look at real-time data. We retrieve data that is used to then augment the historical data that has been used to train the model, and in order to determine what is the best response for a particular bid request based on real-time data such as who is the user, their location, the content that they are consuming, the website or the type of content offered by the website, the flow bid price of the bid request, the campaigns that are currently running, and how best to bid at a level so that the product that is being advertised generates the most amount of sales. So such a model is complicated because it is not just based on the historical data that is being used to train the model, but it's also based on real-time data that is acquired from the bid request and elsewhere as well. So that could include interactions with the DMP, for example. It could include interactions with the consent management platform as to how much of data can be consumed, how much of data do we have consent in order to consume them, and then work with the DMP in order to get the segmentation data, how to then overlay that with the historical data that the model has been trained for in order to arrive at that optimum level of response that needs to be provided for that bid request in order to achieve the best amount of sales for that target to a user who is likely to buy that product.
So to take it as a sort of user journey, perhaps like the orchestration layer that you were talking about, that people can see on the diagram, that would probably be the UI. Ironically, that I kind of said wouldn't exist, but say it was the sales tool agent or like the sales tool that we would be using, and that would then connect with various agents that might do different tasks within that. So you might want to know historical data in order to plan a new campaign. You might want to know specifics about the regions that are of interest, or you might want to know about the particular advertiser and what their normal kind of campaign might look like in order to inform a new campaign. And all of that would work together to then go through the various like models that they might use in order to interpret that information. And that information will come from a database of like more information, perhaps like the Ads Explorer, where there's obviously a lot of information already stored, or anywhere else through the PCAs or something that we might have done previously with certain advertisers in order to create a more holistic view. But it would go through those layers of information and I guess like task managers to get to that point.
Yes, in fact, I would see the Ads Explorer as sitting on the Web3 layer that we were talking about, and there would be not just a read, but also a write into the Ads Explorer depending on what the operations are. Because at the end of the day, if you're looking at a bid shaping tool, a bid shaping model that we were talking about, the model that we just spoke about is what we refer to as a bid shaping model, where we are able to shape the responses for every bid request, and that bid shaping model would provide the optimum response for any bid request, and that would then generate an ad impression which would then go back into the Ads Explorer. But in order to arrive at an optimum bid response, the bid shaping model will need to retrieve data in real time from the Ads Explorer and maybe other centralized databases as well, or other sources like the DMP, for example, as I was saying, in order to determine what is that best response. So there is both a read and a write once the impression is generated as a result of that particular response that was submitted. Of course, not everything has to go through the same model, which is why I'm talking about fragmentation of models as well, based on specific responsibilities of each model and the agents built on top of them. So everything is notarized on the Ads Explorer, but there's a lot that is going in terms of a chain of models that is built on top of the Ads Explorer, which is what is covered in the AdTech layer. So the AdTech layer, even though we talk about it as one layer, it has multiple sublayers in it as well, where each model has a specific responsibility. Each model is trained for a specific activity, and it will then perform that role, but then it will then be able to pass on the output of it either to the orchestration layer or for other models to ingest that data and then to arrive at its own decisions.
Yeah. Okay. So I think like within a campaign, there's like various things that have to take place. So you might be like, okay, my KPI is just clicks, but how do you get better click-through rate is one model potentially, but then you're also talking about a video campaign. So I also need to know how and where to serve videos to get the best like click-through rate. and what those videos might be in terms of like the size or things like that are all bits of information that would create its own model. So that'd be a video serving model plus a metric model plus a even country-based model or advertiser-based model, all creating a kind of fuller product suite effectively to like get the end result that the buyer was looking for.
Absolutely. And this comes down to what we refer to as a single responsibility principle, where we don't want to be overloading a single model with different types of decision-making prowess, right? So also what it allows us to do as a development team, as a product team, is to be able to roll out each of these models one after another without actually waiting for a significant amount of time till all of the models are ready. So we can, for example, roll out the media planning model and the agent that interacts with the users, that enables interactions with the model as the first cut of our AI journey. And that is sufficient in order to remove a certain part of the stickiness that is involved in the sales part of the sales process. At a later point in time, once we are ready with the training of the second model, we can then roll out, let's say, the bit shaper model, right? So one does not have to depend on the other, and we can then slowly phase out each of those functions which are semi-automated, semi-human, human, and semi-manual, and then we can remove them and replace them with models and agents on top of them.
Yeah, I guess when you're doing like one thing at a time, it's like it just has to do that one job very well. But then as soon as you add another thing, another agent or another model on top of it, you then probably have to have some sort of weighting system, which again is like done from the orchestration of those elements together.
Absolutely. And there are other considerations as well. Like, for example, we talk about this again in our meetings. We refer to this as RBAC, or it's popularly called RBAC, which is role-based access control. Now, who can access what data and at what point in time? How much of data are they authorized to access? If, for example, there is a media agency and there are multiple teams within the media agency, should everybody within the media agency be able to see all of the data that is pertaining to that media agency? Probably not. Because if there is somebody from the finance team, they should be able to see just the financial data corresponding to the campaigns that are run for that media agency, and somebody who is in the operations team should be granted enough responsibility and authorization to create campaigns and to modify campaigns, and vice versa. Right. So there is this role-based access control also that we are building into this whole model, so that, you know, it is not just a model that is trained to do something and anybody can do anything that they want to do with it. We want to set the guardrails along the way so that it is enterprise grade. We do not want campaigns that are created for one brand to be accessible to people from another brand. We do not want campaigns created for one media agency to be accessible to another media agency. We want to be able to aggregate some of the information so that, you know, the intelligence is then distributed across the media agencies without actually exposing impression level data, without actually exposing any of the confidential or information that we should not be exposing as part of our NDAs or SLAs. So these are very, very important things to actually consider along with the training of these models and rolling them out.
So within like a particular agency, they'll obviously have different ways in which they want to share certain information, but it also allows them to share some information which is more generalized and less specific. So at the moment, you might have like a conflict within an agency because you've got both like Mars and Craft or something at the same agency. Obviously, you don't want them to know information that has been gained through their media spend, but you might want to have more general information about how you get better click-through rates generally on websites, or a better view-through rate on videos. So the specifics of each of those clients can be kept private, but you will be able to use the models that actually help you get better results overall, because that's the agency's knowledge rather than client-specific.
That's very true. So there are aggregated data and aggregated knowledge that we can share across all the media agencies, but there are specific metrics that we cannot allow other agencies to actually acquire. So that is where we have to operate each media agency, each brand in silos, where we are sandboxing the amount of information and intelligence that is acquired through those campaigns specific to that media agency. And there is something that we can get aggregate, which can then be distributed across all of the models. So we can have models specific to a media agency or models that cater to all of the media agencies, all other brands, all of the DSPs, and so on. So that's another one that we have to look at. But what we have to be very, very careful about is the security, the confidentiality, the hallucinations of these models, and how we are able to provide business value while actually considering all of these key important parts which go into making an enterprise grade solution. It is not just a POC that we are working on, but something that is more enterprise grade, which will need us to be looking at privacy, compliance to privacy regulations, security, confidentiality of information, not spreading information that is confidential, and ensuring that there are no hallucinations in the models that we are training, and various such factors are back. These are some of the things that we need to keep a close control over, and that is something that we are working towards as well.
So with great power comes great responsibility, and as a Spider-Man. But I think that's a good place to kind of wrap it up. We've kind of gone deep dive into how Alkimi uses AI and why those tools are actually going to be really important moving forward for not just the AdTech industry, but kind of using blockchain technology within the AdTech space as well. So yeah, thanks very much for your time, Chandru, and I'll see you again soon.
See you.